The Detroit Red Wings have ended their losing streak, but now comes a tough fight for the playoffs ahead. Brian Fisher of Locked On Red Wings joins us to discuss what lies ahead for Detroit as they battle for one of the final playoff spots in the Eastern Conference.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. The Detroit Red Wings have been one of the most intriguing teams in the NHL over the last 3 or 4 weeks. Brian Fisher of Locked On Red Wings joins us to talk about that. And Brian, let's start with this. How important was it for this team psychologically to end that losing streak?
Well, there's no way I can sell that short on how important it was. You could watch that hockey game, and when Christian Fischer, basically like the epitome of a grinded out goal, like falling to the ice, just throws it at the net, and it finds itself, behind Luukkonen for the Buffalo Sabres. It almost felt like, not just with the fans, but with the players, the relief set in, because getting that goal was just so monumental. The Wings, throughout that 7-game losing streak, had only had 2 leads. And again, in that game, a tough goal given up by James Reimer that he wanted back. It felt like it was, okay, here goes again. They gave up the first goal and it's going to fall apart. But Christian Fischer was able to respond, a guy you don't rely on a lot for goals. Your fourth line came out. They were fantastic. His 3rd goal of the season. It felt like it kind of immediately charged the team. And from there on out, they were fantastic. And then another amazing second effort by JT Compher, diving to knock the puck off the defender's stick out front to a wide open Patrick Kane back door. Like, that was it. You felt the switch flip. Now, granted, we're recording this before they play Pittsburgh tonight. So results notwithstanding of that game, but in that game alone against the Buffalo Sabres on Saturday, it really felt like, at the time at least, the monkey was off the back for the Detroit Red Wings on what was the most horrendous 7-game losing streak I think I've ever seen this team play, especially on the back of a 6-game winning streak and being one of the most successful teams since the new year.
So what was the difference? You go from a 6-game winning streak where this team looked like they could take on and beat anybody to a 7-game losing streak where they couldn't get out of their own way. What was the fundamental difference in the way the team played between those 6 and then 7 games?
Well, it's 2 things, really. The first one, and the most easy one to call out, is goaltending. I mean, when Ville Husso got hurt, you had to have Alex Lyon step up to the plate. He had like 1 game, I think, up until that point when Ville Husso initially got hurt back in December. And then he took over the crease, and in January and in February, he was a top 5 goaltender in the league in save percentage. At one point, he had about a .920 save percentage. And so they're a bad defensive team, Gil. Like, I don't mean the defense, the defense, yes, but the team defense, the way they play defense has not been working. They have a bunch of forwards on their team who historically don't play defense. Daniel Sprong, Patrick Kane, Alex DeBrincat, Robbie Fabry. You could go up and David Perron. You go up and down that lineup. You have a bunch of wingers who historically never make an effort on defense, but you have a defensive system with Derek Lalonde that emphasizes responsible defensive play by the forwards to make it tough to play against. He's trying to replicate that Tampa Bay Lightning mentality, which makes sense because that's where he comes from, is Tampa Bay. But on the losing streak, that just wasn't happening. He was able to get them to do that on the winning streak, right? And that's the second part of it. They were bailed out by incredible goaltending by Alex Lyon, but on the winning streak, and when they were playing so good, they were getting the buy-in from the forwards to support the defense in the defensive zone. It wasn't perfect. There were plenty of times where when goals did happen because a forward missed an assignment or didn't make the extra stride because they were cheating, trying to get an odd man rush going the other way. But it was working. In fact, if you go on Money Puck and you had at that time sorted by high danger chances against, the Red Wings were top 5 for fewest. They were doing a really good job of, while they were getting outshot attempted, they're one of the worst teams in the league at 5-on-5 at shot attempts share per game. If you look at where those shots were coming from, a lot of them were coming from the point or along the boards because they were doing a great job interrupting the passes to the slot or clearing the slot away, coupled with the fantastic goaltending. They were tough to beat in that stretch. And then because they were tough to score on, they'd go back down the other way on a odd man rush, on a breakaway, and they'd be money. And that was going to the success. But like I like to say, your biggest strength is usually also your biggest weakness. Alex Lyon came back down to earth. And once your goaltender started giving up saves or goals on saves he would initially have made a month prior, the confidence started to wane. The forwards got back to making poor decisions defensively, as in not playing any defense at all. And from there, they were just allowing goal after goal after goal, and their offensive creativity that they had so much of had fizzled out. So it really comes back to you were riding really good goaltending, and you had buy-in defensively from your forwards. And when that went away, you saw how bad this team could be.
So there's about 15 games left on the schedule. What is the key for the Red Wings if they're going to end this slump and make the playoffs?
Oh, the key. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it really is going to have to be buy-in defensively from your forwards. On that losing streak, you got almost no forechecking. You got dump and chase hockey where the forwards were losing the race, or they'd start a board battle and lose the board battle. You just couldn't get any sustained offensive zone pressure. And then coming back down the ice, you'd be lucky if your winger picked up their guy in the defensive zone, which would lead to a defenseman then having to try and come out and cover, leaving a guy open back door. It's going to have to be defensive buy-in from your forwards because that is how you're going to win. Your goaltending out, Alex Lyon could get hot again, but I'm not going to bet on it. And this isn't a shot at Alex Lyon. They're in a position they are now because of how fantastic he is. But Ville Husso's still working his way back again from injury. James Reimer, we know, isn't the guy. They won 4-1 against Buffalo Sabres on Saturday, but the one goal they allowed was a 5-hole shot that never left the ice from the top of the circle. I mean, and he did the same thing against the Vegas Golden Knights. So I'm not going to look at my goaltending and go, okay, and hope that one of them gets hot again. I'm going to look at my team in front of him and hope that they decide to buy in and play good defense because, I mean, the age-old adage, right? Defense wins championship. If these forwards who we know can score, because as the same forwards that I listed as being historically bad defensively are bona fide snipers in a lot of those cases. If they can buy in defensively, it's going to result in goals on the other end. They just have got to contribute in that way. And I mean, they got 15 games left, like you said, and it's not a bad schedule. I wish they would have beaten Buffalo and Arizona these last 2 games before that, but they have Pittsburgh next, who's out of the playoff picture right now, but they're not out of it. They could still climb back in. Columbus after that, and a big game on Thursday against your New York Islanders. So as much as this losing streak has allowed them to slip away or slip out of the playoff race, even though as of recording this, they still have, well, even regardless of a loss to the Pittsburgh Penguins, they will have the second wild card by 1 point heading into Monday because the Capitals don't play until Monday. They still hold their own future in their hands. And with Dylan Larkin hopefully coming back this week coming up, because he's been injured the last 2 weeks, that's a big boost in the locker room that can hopefully get them back pointed at the right direction.
All right, Brian, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Well, you can find the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts, right? I mean, if you listen on YouTube, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the Odyssey app, AUDACY. Shout out them because they're also my full-time job. So as well as follow us on Twitter at LO_Red Wings on X. And I am also on Twitter at Brian Fisher, WWJ, and my co-host is at Bentley Scotty.
All right, Brian, thanks so much. Always a pleasure.
Of course, Gil. You know I can talk for 20 minutes unencumbered about the Red Wings, so.
Today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you could still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer.